I'm Kristen Grubbs. I'm the planning director in Newbury. I'm going to welcome all of you and introduce a few of the people who are involved in this project to kick off. First, I want to thank and acknowledge the National Wildlife Refuge here at Parker River, in particular Ella Weber, who's our visitor services manager. And Matt Hillman wasn't able to be here tonight, but as the manager of the refuge has also been very supportive of this project. In addition, I would like to acknowledge that this is a joint project of Newbury and Newburyport, and we have the chair of the Board of Selectmen here tonight, Bill DeMayo. Thank you for coming, Bill. We also have support from the mayor's office. I know Mayor Reardon was not able to attend tonight, but we have Christian Sear, Chief of Staff. Thank you very much for coming. In addition, John Eric White, who's our city engineer in Newburyport, has been a critical part of this project coming together. So thanks to all the Newburyport folks. We also have other partners, including the chair of Newburyport's Resiliency Committee, where's Jane? And Sarah. And Sarah too. Thank you guys for supporting this project. We have Art Courier, who's involved in ACES, Alliance for Climate and Environmental Stewards. Thank you. We also have folks from Newburyport Livable Streets, Rick Tainter and Sheila Tainter, and some other members of Newburyport Livable Streets. Yep, I think that's everybody for Newburyport. And then our other really important partner is Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, which is our regional planning commission. We have Gerard Witten, who's here, and also a Newbury resident, as well as Elizabeth Maldari, who's a transportation planner for MVPC, really important parts of our project team. And then finally, we have our consultants who will be speaking with you tonight. We have Eric Doremus, who's our civil engineer, project manager, Shannon Jameson, who's our senior landscape architect for Tie and Bond, Bob Ulig, who's vice president of landscape architecture and urban design, and a Newburyport resident, thank you, and Adam Yanulis, who's client sector leader for Eastern New England for Tie and Bond. I forgot to mention Peter Phippen is here with MVPC as well and been doing coastal work for a long time. And all of you are important to be here tonight. So thank you so much. And I will pass it off to Shannon and Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, can everyone hear all right in the back there? Great. So once again, my name is Eric Doremus, project manager and civil engineer with Tie and Bond. We are here today to hear from you all. So this is a listening and gathering session for us. We're just getting started on our feasibility study here. So we're going to go through and, if my clicker will work, give you a brief introduction, who we are as Tie and Bond and what we're going to talk about tonight. So Tie and Bond is a full-service engineering, environmental, permitting specialist consulting firm. We're focused on the New England region. We have 15 offices throughout New England. This highlights here a few of our key services that we offer. So that will be related to this project. We have our marine engineering, waterfront engineering, environmental consulting, civil engineering, design, transportation, and then also our public outreach and community engagement, which is why we're here today. We're also partnered with Streamworks. We didn't mention that earlier today. We have Tom Ballestero here in the crowd here as well, who will be providing our hydrology and modeling expertise as we go through our feasibility study. Our full project team's not here today, since this is just a listening station or a listening evening for us to hear from you all. But during our next public presentation and reach out, where we'll be presenting some of our concepts and our alternatives, we'll have the whole team here to answer any questions and hear again from what you guys have to offer. There we go. Oh, there it goes. All right, so the agenda of what we're going to do tonight, so we're going to start off with a quick, brief introduction, our presentation in here, and then we're going to ask everyone to join us in the classroom across the hall, where we're really going to interact with you all, hear all your feedback, hear any questions you have. So we'll go through why are we here, what have we learned in the past, go through opportunities and challenges for the area, and then highlight some of the outreach that we'll be doing throughout this study. So a project overview, what are we trying to do here? So we are here to study the options and impacts for maintaining access to the federally owned lands of the Parker National Wildlife Refuge. So that's really the root reason why we are here and why we are doing this feasibility study, is to maintain safe and dependable access to federally owned lands. As part of that project, we're going to see what other improvements we can do, for multimodal transportation options, environmental considerations, how can we help restore salt marsh in the area, which is a key critical area for us. And we also need to keep in mind the cost of doing any improvements. I know everything costs money to do, so we want to make sure that any improvements that we're proposing and we're considering are attainable. Come on. We'll take a click. Hello, please. There we go. So, as I briefly mentioned earlier, the main goal is to maintain that safe and dependable access to the federal lands because this is a federally funded project. So, it's funded through a FLAP grant, Federal Lands Access Program, which is administered by the DOT Federal Highway Administration in partnership with Mass DOT, and with also our local involvement with the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So a lot of organizations at play here. Main picture, federally funded project, maintaining access to the park. Take a click. Thank you. So as part of the grant, there are certain requirements that we have to address. Listed on here, the first one is safety and accessibility. That's our prime concern here. We want to make sure that the National Wildlife Refuge does not get cut off, and Plum Island itself does not get cut off during extreme storms, tidal events. We want to protect the only way on and off the island. We also are going to be considering multimodal considerations. Right now it's mostly just a road. We're going to look at, are there options to provide dedicated pedestrian or bike lanes and how that works while keeping the environment in consideration, right? We can't just go and put up a bunch of seawalls and blow through the salt marsh. We need to make sure it all works together. So we're going to look at options of monitoring and restoring salt marsh through this project, improving aquatic species passage and migration through the salt marsh, and improving overall drainage in the area. So, as I'm sure many of you are aware, there have been many projects and studies already done. And I just want to make sure it's clear that we're not starting from scratch here. This is a list of some of the previous studies that have been done in the past 5 to 7 years that we have been reviewing, and we are reviewing, and will be taking into consideration for any proposed improvements that we'll be providing. So part of the reason we're here tonight, if there's other studies or other information that you are aware of that might not be on this list, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, next slide, please. And I'll pass it off to Shannon.
So in terms of our project understanding, as Eric mentioned, this is a federal, a FLAP grant that is funding this project. And so we have a very kind of strictly defined project area. So the project study area starts at the end of Ocean Ave, at the intersection of Ocean Ave and Plum Island Turnpike. It extends across the drawbridge where it becomes Plum Island Boulevard, ending at Newbury Beach. And then there's also an additional, the spur of Sunset Drive from the intersection of Plum Island Turnpike and Plum Island Boulevard, which ends at the the Parker River National Wildlife Gatehouse. And so the project area, you'll see that we've broken it down into 4 quadrants. Through our early analysis, we've noticed that each of these 4 quadrants has their own set of opportunities and challenges. And so rather than creating a kind of one-size-fits-all solution for the entire length of this study area. It seems advantageous for us to study this entire project area in smaller pieces and to look at it, not holistically in terms of applying a singular solution to all areas, but rather find ways to create appropriate solutions for each of these areas. And so you'll see in the classroom in a little bit when we go over there to gather your input and have more intimate conversations about these issues and solutions and challenges, that we have 4 stations set up in the classroom. Each of those 4 stations will be consistent with these 4 quadrants. So as we're going through the rest of the presentation, if you want to just keep that in mind, if you have specific focus areas, specific challenges, opportunities, comments that you'd like to make later on, you'll be able to find each of these areas in those same 4 quadrants across the hall.
So this slide here just shows some of the key issues that are known within this Turnpike and road area, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. We have our king tides and tidal storm surge overtopping the roadway more frequently than we've seen in the past. It's a more reoccurring problem. It's also a narrow roadway with limited multimodal provisions. When we say multimodal, that's anything besides a car, addressing bicycles, walking, any other type of way to transport a human. And there's also restricted tidal flow that we'd be looking at potentially improving, and how does that relate to the health and the vulnerability of the salt marsh?
So as Eric mentioned earlier, as part of this project, as part of this feasibility study, there will be a lot of agency outreach along with our public engagement. And so the Plum Island Turnpike it's located adjacent to wetland resource areas. Clearly it's going right through the salt marsh. And so that opens us up to be under the jurisdiction of both federal, state, and local regulations. Next, please. Because we've opened that door to federal, state, and local regulations, the regulatory agencies are going to require that we provide alternatives analysis to show that any improvements that we are suggesting making have very minimized impacts to the salt marsh resource areas. Next, please. And through that process, they're going to require that any improvements that we make also involve mitigation for any potential impacts that we've made to the salt marsh and other resource areas. Next, please. During this process, we'll be consulting several times with various federal, state, and local permitting agencies. We'll be having an interaction with them early on to identify any key triggers for, sometimes we like to call them no-fly zones. Are there any major issues that may prevent us from recommending a certain solution? We'd like to catch that early on. And then throughout the process, in partnership with your engagement and the feedback that we get from you all as we start to develop concepts, we'll be meeting with them again to review concepts and ensure that what we are putting forth is permittable. Next, please. And then these are some of the, not during the feasibility study, but as these projects move forward, if they were to move forward into construction, these are some of the permits that are likely to be required for any of these future implementations. And you may be familiar with some of these permits. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but some of them include MEPA permitting, Chapter 91, coastal zone management, water quality certification, and Mass Historical Commission. Next, please. And then Eric's going to walk you through a little bit more detail about our agency engagement and outreach schedule.
Yeah, so like we said earlier, we are very early on in this process. We wanted to reach out to the community before we really got started so that we can ensure that all of your input is brought into our study and our reports. So we're right at that bubble between the spring and summer 2025. Our first public outreach meeting. We've started our information gathering. We've performed a site walk to identify any critical areas that are more detailed noted in our classroom that we'll all be looking at. And after this meeting, we'll summarize the feedback that we've received, start to develop some concepts, review the data that we have, and start that first agency outreach. Like Shannon said, we want to catch that early on, start those discussions early on with the permitting agencies to make sure that any improvements that we're providing are actually actionable and permittable. After our first outreach, we'll further develop our design concepts, working with our core team here. And then around the end of summer 2025, once we've really nailed down what options are available for maintaining that safe and dependable access, we'll come back to you, the public, present concepts, once again, gather feedback, digest the feedback, modify our concepts, determine our preferred concepts, I'm saying that concepts word a lot, and then go back to the agency to say, here's what we want to do, what's our permitting pathway to make it happen. After understanding the permitting restrictions and permitting pathway, this all gets wrapped up into a final report towards fall of 2025, summarizing all of our findings, and go from there. So I'd ask you all to come join us over in the classroom to have more of an intimate discussion on each of these areas. We really want to hear everybody's feedback. We have a sign-in sheet if you didn't catch your assignment on the way in, name tags. We also have some brief surveys with a couple questions, kind of get your brain running a little bit for what type of feedback we're looking for, and look forward to talking with you all.